I want to talk about something related to Tumah Taira. Okay, stay in your seats. Don't walk out yet. Relax. It's not so terrible. And I want to start like this. I want to talk a little bit first about the golden age of Tzfat, and then we'll move on to the actual Tumah Taira Shaila and the machlekes that I want to discuss. I think everybody on some level is familiar enough that in Tzfat in the 1500s, let's say 1550, was mamish like a golden age. There was a collection of Gedolei Hadar there that is like Kamat unmatched again in history. I don't think of another place that ever had like such a outpouring of Gedolei Hadar. For example, the Beis Yosef lived there, the Arizal lived there, the Shita Mekubetzes lived there, the Radvaz lived there, the Charedim lived there, the Baal Chadaidi lived there, the Ramak lived there. It's like an incredible amount of Gedolei Olam, really high caliber Gedolim, who lived there at the same time. Now, if you go to the Beis HaKaras in Tzfat, you'll see what's left over of this, incredible flowering of Tzfat's Yiddishkeit at that time. Now, invariably, if you have so many great men in such tight proximity, such a close area, there's going to be some room for friction and disagreement. Meaning, not always are they going to see eye to eye in every single prat, be it in Kabbalah or Halacha or etc., because these are all great, original, creative men, who each one of them put forth work that stood the test of time, meaning that was relevant to all of Klal Yisrael. So, I'll say this little story first. It has nothing to do with what I want to talk about, but it's a cute story. The Arizal was nifter at 38 years old. Arizal died very, very young. So he was an incredible kapshtik, like an incredible talent of a man. He learned first by the Ramak, or Moshe Cordovero, who had been like his Rebbe in Kabbalah, who wrote the first sefer, like the first serious sefer on Zohar, not on Zohar, but on Kabbalah B'chal, Pardes, remind him, I shouldn't say the first, but like he made a collection, he organized everything that was known about Kabbalah till his dar, and put it down. And then the Arizal came and built on top of that. Now the Arizal was a Talmud of Moshe Cordovero, but at some point he developed like his own derech, and he started branching off and doing his own Kabbalistic, Mahalchim. Anyone wants to know exactly the pratim of the Machlekes, or? No, okay, we'll leave it. But the Arizal started doing his own thing. Now his Rebbe in Nigla was the Radvaz. Now, when the Radvaz heard that his Talmud Arizal was starting to do giving these Kabbalah shiurim and like differently than what the accepted Messiah was, what the Ramak was, he said he was upset about it, and he said he wants to send a Talmud of his, the Shita Mekubetzes, or B'tzal Ashkenazi, who was also a chavrusa of the Arizal, so like a friend of them all. He said, why don't you go to the shiur where he's going to give a shiur in his Kabbalah, and in the middle, when he diverges from the Ramak's derech, hakin, and then shlag it up, bring up the Ramak and make ruckus by the shiur, like to show him that this is leizu derech, this is not the way. So the Ramak, the Rebbe Tzal Ashkenazi went to the shiur of the Arizal, and while he's sitting there, the Arizal is getting heated up to the moment. He's getting to the punchline where he's going to start delivering his chilukim, and Tzal Ashkenazi is warming up. He's ready to make an interruption, and suddenly from the back of the room he sees the Radvaz walk in, his Rebbe, the joint Rebbe, then walk in and take a seat in the row in the front and start, nodding along and taking notes, listening really carefully to the Arizal's words. Okay, he figures the plan must be off. If the Radvaz showed up himself, plan must be off. He sits quietly. Okay, afterwards he leaves. He ends up back in the house of the Radvaz, and the Radvaz asks him, so you did what I asked you? You shlugged up the shiur? He says, shlugged up the shiur, Rebbe, I saw you were there, and I didn't. Said, me? I was there? I was never there. I was home. Ask my family. I stayed home. Back and forth, they try to figure out what it is. It must be it was Eliyahu Hanavi who came looking like the Radvaz, and to prevent the Shita from slugging up the Arizal's shiur in Kabbalah, the Eliyahu Hanavi came looking like the Radvaz and broke up the whole party. So
it was just someone that looked like him.
Boring, exactly. Now, when Rav Chaim Volozhiner heard this story, he was supposedly said, Ashreinu, 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 he said. Where there's three things to take note of. Ashreinu, that we had someone like the Arizal, whose Torah was so chashav in Shemayim that it was worth defending to send Eliyahu Hanavi down to protect his honor. Ashreinu, we had someone like the Radvaz, who Eliyahu Hanavi would take on his form, that he was chashav enough that Eliyahu Hanavi would take on his form. And Ashreinu, that we had a Shita Mekubetzes, who was worthy of seeing Eliyahu Hanavi when he came to defend Arizal's honor in the form of the Radvaz. So this is Rav Chaim Volozhiner's Ashreinu, Ashreinu, Ashreinu. So I think that's a good hakdama to what we're going to discuss over here, which is some of the conflicting personalities that lived in Tzfat at the time, and a particular shayla that was negated to them. It's begeder Ashreinu, 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 meaning Ashreinu that I'm going to talk about the Mabit and the Beis Yosef. Ashreinu that we had the Mabit, Ashreinu that we had the Beis Yosef, and Ashreinu for all the disagreements and arguments that they had that added such a richness to the Tshuvas. Now, the Radvaz and the Mabit is like this. The Tzfas is the way we know it. Can we lower the volume on this? Tzfat, the way we know it, was like a Kabbalistic hub, right? Like where all the Mekubalim and no, not Mekubalim. Tzfat was where all the Mekubalim lived and worked and did all their that's where Kabbalah flowered. Now the actual halacha l'maisa poskim in Tzfat at the time. So the most famous is the Beis Yosef, right? The Mechaber, the Shulchan Aruch. He wrote the Shulchan Aruch. He wrote the Beis Yosef. He wrote the Kesef Mishnah. He's the posik for all generations. He lived in Tzfat. He was the dayan. Now he also had two other dayanim who sat there with him in the Bezdin. One of them was Rav Moshe Detrani. That's the Mabit. I think everyone's heard of the Mabit. Maybe not on the same level of halacha as the Beis Yosef, but at that time he was. He was another dayan on the Bezdin. And then there was a third one, Rav Yisrael de Kuriel, I think, who no one's heard of today because his shuvas were never published. Now, the Mabit and Reis of Cairo, let's just focus on them. Were both Talmidim of Yaakov Beirav, the Mari Beirav. They took over the Bezdin when he was Nifter, and they paskin. Now, it seems the way the Shilas would come in, the Shilah would come into the Bezdin, someone would present the question, and then each dayan would go back to his home-based medrash, work it over with his Talmidim, his, close people, produce a tshuva, and bring the tshuva into Bezdin and try to come to a psak together. Now, invariably, as is the way Kachi Darka Shel Torah, the Beis Yosef and the Mabit often disagreed with each other. They often did not come to the same conclusion. And many times, if you look at the Chuvas of the Beis Yosef and the Avkas Reichel and the Chuvas Beis Yosef, and you compare them to the Mabit, you'll find similar questions with very diverging answers. Sometimes you'll find them addressing each other. You'll see this machlekes crop up. Now, what happens is as follows, that the Beis Yosef had a much more successful yeshiva. He had a very, very popular yeshiva. He had hundreds, maybe at least dozens, maybe hundreds of Talmidim throughout the years who learned by him. So it became like a Paiskim mill. Meaning the Beis Yosef was matriculating Talmidim who were capable of paskining at a good rate, at a good clip. So Beis Yosef eventually had Dayanim and Rabbanim and Talmidei Chachamim and Chevron. He produced a whole klutza of people, and the Mabit had a smaller yeshiva. So if he had 2 Talmidim a year who matriculated, he had a handful of Talmidim who were able to paskin Shilas and be on the level. So what would happen is, every time there'd be a machlekes, the Mabit and the Beis Yosef, it would end up being a collection of poskim, like it would be 20 against 1. Because all the Beis Yosef's Talmidim would pile on and say, no, our Rebbe's right, this is the thing. And the Mabit, at some point, there's some letters, there's chuvas, this is all very well documented. He got extremely frustrated with this, and he couldn't have it. I want to read you a quote that he wrote in one of his letters over here. He writes, Olam hafach re'isi. I've seen an upside down world. Tachtainim reitzim lalis l'mayla she'enim ru'yim lahem. Yingalat, people who are not shaykh to anything, they want to go to the highest levels that are not right to them. And the Grace mentioned, he's referring to the Beis Yosef over here, just bury their face and they don't protest at all. And then you have these lower, nobodies beating the Alyonim, which means himself, meaning the serious paiskim. And every guy says, I'm going to be the king, I'm going to be the one to make psak. They don't know the place. It just gives rise to any Amaretz thinking he could paskin. Children could be disrespectful to their elders, and small people could be disrespectful to the ones who are greater than them. This is making me sick. Again, he continues on in this vein. So the Mabit came to a head. He was very, very frustrated with the different psakim, and then over like it's like a 10 or 12 year period from, call it like 1530 something to 1540 something, I think it's dozens of chuvas between the Beis Yosef and the Mabit, literally on every issue. He says Asi, he says Muti, he says Muti, he says Asar, Ahin, Aher, everything's a fight. They're in Yanei Cheshem Mishpat, Kedushin, Agunis, Gittin, Stam, town policy, psakim about staka. It's like, literally, there's 100 pages over here going through all the different machleksim that the Mabit and the Beis Yosef had with each other in psak. Now, ultimately, they had some sort of things settled down, and there's a tremendous love. If you read the letters, there's a tremendous love between the Mabit and the Beis Yosef as well. They write with great love and reference and respect for each other. So this is a true machlekes l'shem shemayim, like a true honorable, rabbinic machlekes, but it was an extensive rabbinic machlekes that existed for a long time. So on that I say Ashreinu, Ashreinu, Ashreinu. In any case, now why am I talking about this? Because in this week's parasha, we talk about the Torah talks about the tumah that's relevant to Kehanim, right? Kehanim are not allowed to become Tamil Lameis. That's a din. A Kohen's only not allowed to become Tamil Lameis. Now, the basic dinim of Tumas Meis, everybody's more or less familiar with. We'll just simply put, is maga, masa, and oil. These are the 3 methods that a person can become Tamil. Oil is the one that I think we think of most common, like being under a tree or under a building or in an airplane or right in a hospital. Meaning that's the one that is most common that people think about probably. How a Kohen can become Tamil. And this is a din de raisa kindness. Be careful not to become tamei. This is a din. Now, there is like another like obscure din that's not so well known, that's relevant, and the reason why I'm talking about it is because it's a Mabit Beis Yosef, little vignette about the Mabit Beis Yosef, and I want to go into it a drop. Now, the Mabit had a son, the Marit, which is Rabbi Yosef Titrani, that's the son of Yosef ben Moshe Titrani, who allegedly, and I don't know if this is true, but allegedly the Chazon Ish said, when they asked him, who's the biggest of all the Achreinim, the Chazon Ish said the Marit. They asked him, even bigger than Beis Yosef, and he said the Marit was the biggest. This is what allegedly the Chazon Ish said. Now, I don't know if this is true, and someone, I think, in one of the Svarim says they asked Reb Chaim Kanievsky, and Reb Chaim Kanievsky said, not everything they say in the Chazon Ish's name you should believe. So, I don't know, make of it what you want. I mean, that itself is a psak. Not every, and that continues, and continuing. Not everything they say in his name you should believe. But in any case, there's a tshuva as follows. I want to read you a little interesting child. The Marit is being asked by someone. The Marit was, I think, under 10 years old when his father, the Mabit, was nifter. Meaning the Mabit was an old man, but the Marit was from a second marriage. He was a little child. He didn't really, maybe I'm wrong. I think I'm right. Okay, I think I'm right. I think he was little. Yeah, if someone wants to correct me, jump in now, or forever hold your peace. But I think that the Marit was very young when his father dies. Yeah, someone whip it out. Okay, but he says as follows. He says, "My deshmi le'lamar al harav Abba Marizal." You heard this rumor about my father. Shahayru l'kayin echad shayadar b'tech hakan. Now a kan is like a development, like we have now, like houses around a square. And a circle square is open, and then there's like an entrance to get out of it. It says, you heard about my father. Shahayru l'kayin echad shayadar b'tech hakan b'tzfas. Here's the problem. This guy was a kohen. He lived inside this closed courtyard. Okay, his house is right here. Here's the entrance, but there was a dead guy in this house. That's what the presumption of the question is, or a dead guy over here. And he refused to come into the chutzner, even though it was open air. Meaning he wasn't going to come to me. Refused to come into the open air because there's a din of Tzfat Tomalatis, which we're going to go into. And my father, he says, you heard that my father, the Mabit, that he could come in. My father told him there's no such a thing. Tumah is not on Shabbos. There's no Tumas Meis on Shabbos. That's what my father told him. He was 8. Okay, sound right. Yeah, I said he was under 10. I wasn't sure exactly the number. A little boy. Okay, very good. So he says, and this is the what caught my eye. He says, when they said over this psak for my father in front of the Beis Yosef, in front of Yitzchak Cairo, Amar Anila Shamati, I never heard of such a rule that on Shabbos there's no such thing as Tumas Meis. Who shama? He must have heard it. I don't know. That's a verbal eye roll. I never heard of this, but he must have some sort of Messiah that tells him this is true. And you asked me, do I know where my father, the Mabit's Messiah was, that there's no Tumas Meis on Shabbos? That's what you asked me. So we have over here a bizarre question. The Shayl is asking the Marit that I have a story. I know the Marit. I know a story about your father, the Mabit, where he seemed to have paskin that there's no such thing as Tumas Meis on Shabbos. Now, that doesn't seem to make sense. There's no pasuk that says that. There's no Gemara that says that. There's no Rambam that says that, meaning this was all known to them. The Mabit knew that. The Marit knew that. The Beis Yosef knew that. Even I know that. So that's not, what I'm saying? That was a known thing. So what's going on over here? So what is this din that he's referring to? So let me just explain a little bit the background of the din, and then I'll share what this is, and I think everything will make sense. There's a din as follows. Let's say there's a dead person in an apartment building, okay? There's 10 apartments in the building. Now, if each apartment has a door that closes, and you're locked in your own room, or the mace is in his own room, the tumah does not go from room to room. Okay, that's a pretty basic halacha in oil, and by oil ha-mace. Even if the oil is connected, meaning it's one roof, there's one big roof over here, and there's a bunch of apartments, the mace is in one of them, the door is closed, the tumah does not transfer. That's a halacha. Now, there's another halacha, and this is a Mishnah in Alis, in Perek Zayin, Mishnah Gimel, that says as follows. It's a din like this. It says that if there's a house that has many, many doors and windows and etc., and there's a mace inside of there, now mason have to eventually get taken out of the house to go get buried somewhere, right? A mace doesn't stay inside the house. So the din is that any kalim that are under any one of these doorways or windowsills or whatever, meaning that are under the windowsill or the doorway, become tameh, because it's a din called soif hatomalatzes. Since the tumah is ultimately going to exit through an exit, it's going to go out one of these ways. Anything that's there becomes tameh now already. That's a halach. It's a chumrah. Chumrah in Hilchos.
It's a second floor window. The tumah is not leaving from there either.
I believe the rule applies to it too. Yeah, I believe the rule applies to it too. Sefer Tamalatzis. Now, there's a Gemara in Be'ah and Daf Yod that has a whole machlekes about the Gemara. The Mishnah says that if you choose a specific door and you say I'm only going out through that door, then the rest of them are not tameh. You could choose a door. Now the Gemara has a shayla. What about if you choose a door later on? The guy died already. there's a million kalim living, hanging out under all these doors and windows, and then you say, by the way, we're going to go out that door. Could you retroactively repair it and fix it or not? So this is a machlekes in the Gemara and Beya. Leave it aside. Now there's a shaila if this is midin deiraisa, the Rabbanon, Rambams, Rashis, etc. I don't want to get too lost in the nitty gritty. But the basic din, you understand? The basic din that if it's any window or door that it's going to go out of is automatically tamei. That's the din. Now comes along the Trumas Hadeshen and brings down a chumrah. He says that people adopted on their own. They said as follows: there's a chumrah that Kaihanim took upon themselves, and it's brought down in Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch and Siman Shinai and Aleph in your day and Chazavelis brings this down. Any Kaihanim here? Anybody's Kaihan? You're a Kaihan. Oh, okay, one second. We have a whole bunch of Kaihanim. Okay, so this is very relevant. The din is as follows: this is a chumrah that people took upon themselves, that the city, let's say, had a gate, you go, let's say, Shar Yafo in Yerushalayim, that booth when you come outside, the Kehanim made a rule that anytime there's a dead person in the city, Kehanim would not stand in that booth, in that building by the gate. Why? Because of this din of Tzfat Malatzis. Since the body's going to come out through the gate, because it has to go get buried outside, so they don't stand in that thing. That was the rule that they made. Because of Tzfat Malatzis, this is the chumrah the Trumas Hadeshen brings down. Now, the Trumas Hadeshen is mefakfik. This is a good thing, this is a bad thing. The Ramah brings down both versions. Ramah says, yesh noyegim to have this chumrah, and it's a good thing, but you don't have to have this chumrah. Now, this is the din that's in play over here. So comes along the shayla that was asked to the mabit, and the kohen says, let's go back to the question. The kohen says, I'm outside over here. There's a dead person inside. This doorway that I have to come in through is a Sefer Tomalatzis doorway. It's a doorway that the body's going to come out through. I can't go in. I have to stay outside those Shabbos. Says the mabit, no, there's no Thomas Mace on Shabbos, right? So explains the Marit, his son, in this whole line of tshuva over here as follows. He says like this. It's a misunderstanding, he says. Everyone knows this din of Sefer Tomalatzis, that's only by a house. The mace is in a house, in a building. Any one of the doors of that house have that din. This din, that even a door extended far away, down the block, that's not even in the same aisle, like this case. The mace is in the courtyard over here, and this door is over here, but just eventually it's going to go through it. That's not the din of Sefer Tomalatzis. That's not a din that it's really tummy. That din, he says, is a chumrah that Kehanim made for a simple reason. They were afraid. Let's say they're sitting there, they're chilling, they're playing, they're schmoozing, they're having a cigarette in that doorway. And suddenly the levaya kicks up, and before you know it, boom, there's a mace passing through it. So in order to avoid surprise funerals, that's what the Marit says, in order to avoid surprise funerals, Kehanim made this chumrah on themselves. We don't hang out in areas where a surprise funeral could get us in trouble. This is the chumrah that they made. So says the Marit, what my father was saying is, not that the din of Sefer Tomalatzis, so the din of Tumas Meis doesn't apply on Shabbos. What my father was saying is, there are no surprise funerals on Shabbos. People don't get buried on Shabbos. If the mace is dead and he's laying in the courtyard, he's there all Shabbos. The whole chumrah for Kehanim not to stand in a place where there could be surprise funerals is not negay on Shabbos. There's no tum on Shabbos. Not that there's no tum on Shabbos. There's no makom for this event to happen to Kehanim on Shabbos. Now, this is the Shiloh, and this is the Marit's explanation. I grabbed it just because he was a little boy, like you looked up. He writes over here that he himself did not witness the story. He says over here. He says, I heard it from, I can't find it now. He says, I heard it from Rabbi Lezer Askari. That's the writer of the Sefer Charedim, Mesiach Lefitumay. He says, somebody told it to me that this was the story. Meaning he was obviously was not there or didn't know the part of the story. He says, I heard it from someone else that this is the story. So in defense, this is posthumously defending his father's honor from a critique of the Beis Yosef. He's bringing down what the story is and what the exact thing is. Now, this is, to me, Akapanim, interesting, little, peek into the life of the Mabit and the Beis Yosef and Tzfat in the Golden Era. But surprisingly, this is not a shayla that's not negay b'zman hazeh. This is a very negay shayla b'zman hazeh. A lot of the poskim, Shmuel Vosner, some Zalman Auerbach, have tshuvas from a rabbi, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Halpern. He was a big technical guy. He was the one who invented one of the Shabbos elevators. He was like an expert in anything technical, he was like an engineer. But electricity and elevators and etc. And the shayla became as follows. You come to visit in a hospital. Okay, the hospital has doors, right? The morgue has a door, it closes. So the tumah is not, rampant all over the hospital for a kohen to go in there. But what about the corridors or the elevator shaft in the hospital? The body ultimately from the morgue is going to be wheeled in a gurney, taken down a hallway into an elevator, out the building, right? Something's going to happen with it. So l'chaira, every hallway in a hospital, whenever there's a dead person in the morgue, let's say only a Jewish person, because Pashtas Tumas Meis for Kain, at least Midei is only from a Jewish body. What do you say? Yeah, I'm saying it's whatever is so. What about the hallways in the elevator shaft? Are they always going to be tummy every time there's a body in the hallway? Now he had an ha'etza to make special type of aron that morgues would use that would not be that would be non-tumah conductive. You know, he had a whole Einfall, what it would be made out of, how much space would be between the different areas, and he wanted to patent it. So basically,
why would it be any different if it's closed like any other door?
because Sefer Tamalatzis, meaning the elevator is not a room. The elevator is a hallway. The hallway, the elevator shaft. Let's say the place we're looking at it as exits, right? So that's Sefer Tamalatzis, meaning those are not rooms.
What if the mace is not on my floor?
Still Sefer Tamalatzis, meaning if there's a mace on the 8th floor of an apartment building, but he's going to have to come down the elevator and go through the front door to get out, Sefer Tamalatzis says that the front door is tummy.
But it's never open. Meaning, if you go from the 8th floor down to the ground level, so the 4th floor is never exposed.
So Sefer Tamalatzis goes through closed doors. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Closed doors only helps you from Tumas oil. Sefer Tamalatzis now. Yeah, no, but it's a chumrah that the Mishnah says. Meaning Sefer Tamalatzis is a din in the Mishnah. Now there's lumdis to be had over here. Like you're addressing some of the lumdis a little bit. Like is Sefer Tamalatzis another form of oil? Is it called like the doors open? Sefer Tamalatzis tells us that like lumdish correct. We look at it like the doors open and the Tumas is escaping through it. Or is it exeris hakasav? If it's exeris hakasav, so then we could say like halachim shivsinai, whatever. Then we could say be much more limited about it. Be narrow about it. Don't expand it to include everything.
Sefer Tamalatzis only for Caleb?
No. People, oil, yeah, sure. So this was his problem. Rav Levi Yitzchak Halpern, he had the shaila, he sent it to Shevet Alevi, he sent it to Shem Zalman Auerbach. Basically, they were his patent office to try to get people to buy his new kind of casket for transporting out of the hospital that would prevent this tumor from getting around. Now, ultimately, they take get into the weeds. If it's deraisa, derabanan, when it's negay, what the tam for it is. If a lot of pratim. A lot of pratim in the rules of Sefer Tamalatzis, but and I'm not really going to go into the pratim of their shaila, but I'm just saying this shaila has very modern applications as well, like of Sefer Tamalatzis. Now, the most practical answer that's relevant to us is that today, since it's not hospitals don't really want live patients to see dead bodies coming out on the gurney, they have separate entrances exactly. So Sefer Tamalatzis meaning just like the Mishnah says, there's a pre-designated door. Yeah, so you have to know exactly. But it's definitely a separate exit, but it could be that the corridors, right, like the hallways and the elevator might be connected. That still needs.
What's to stop people who have a problem with tumas oil in the hospital? If that's the truth, then what's certain hospitals are better for having not with it?
So not all of them are built with full closure, meaning some of them have gaps. No, oil will get through. Meaning if there's gaps, if there's a window or a door that's not closed, or even some ventilation unit that's big enough, it could let the tumah through, meaning oil. You could have more basic problems that aren't being addressed. But in regards to this problem with Sefer Tamalatzis, generally speaking, there's like a designated door, which Shem Zalman addresses in his tshuva, that hospitals are not going to...
It's not that I'm about to go to hospital.
Yeah, because there's always makom v'shaylas here, absolutely. It's not, it's definitely, yeah. There could be people dying anywhere. Yeah, it's not so, people just tend to die anywhere. It's not so clear. Yeah, exactly. If you can have an odds of someone dying anywhere, it's going to be in a hospital. Exactly. It's not.
Shouldn't go to like hospitals that are known to like just kill their patients.
Just drop their patients. Exactly. Hospitals with high mortality rates, so stay away from. Yeah, no, 100%. I'm talking about a particular question there that he had in trying to patent like this new art. Now, I'm just thinking. 1 second. So this is his Sefer Tamalatzis is irrelevant. I think that's it. We'll hold it here. Okay, to be continued.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.